Here we go.
G'day fans and welcome back to Rip It Off the Card on what is yet another hot and muggy Wednesday evening. Absolutely unbelievable. And you know what happens when it gets hot and muggy on a Wednesday evening? We get to sit and watch Aaron, who's right there basting in his own juices. Mr. Aaron, how you going tonight, old son?
I am trying to sweat through the rim of my own hat. It is like a sauna in here tonight. I don't deliberately keep it warm. It's because this is in the spare room and I don't want you hearing all the family noises going in the background. So I have to lock myself in here and it slowly gets hotter and more humid the more we talk. So
that is complete rubbish. The reason why you're as hot as you are is because you are just a hot dude. You know, it's like, whoo. I mean, if I was in the same room as you, I'd be sitting there going, oh, but still my beating heart, as I'm sure plenty of people do when they say go to your store and they walk in the store and the first thing they go is, oh, I'm just feeling massive coolness here from someone who's super hot.
If you were in the same room with me, you would be trying to claw your way out like the cat tries to get away from Pepe Le Pew.
Yeah, exactly right. I love this from Russell. What's this Aaron Ostrich? He's really stuck with that, actually. He's going the Aaron Ostrich thing. So absolutely unbelievable. So would you class yourself as an Aaron Ostrich?
Well, I haven't got a felt head and a hand up my ass, so probably not.
The vial is correct. It is getting weird already. Yeah, we've only been on the air for a couple of minutes, so there you go. All right, so the first things first, we had to sort of acknowledge that how much has changed in a week since this show was last on. So if you think about last Wednesday and what's happened in the world and whether it be in this country or other countries, a place has gone to the complete shithouse in a single 7 days. It's almost like history repeating itself, because those who were watching our show last year, we were actually sort of plowing on through the whole pandemic and the lockdowns and the curfews. And our focus was to try and bring a bit of happiness and joy to the masses, that were through this miserable time. And I kind of feel like we're doing that again. So with a bit of luck for the next couple of hours at least, we'll be able to push any sort of like negative thoughts from the universe out of your heads and just think about some happy things. What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
Just don't mention the war.
Don't. You're an idiot. There you go. Very, very good. Hang on, what's this? You're the sci-fi version of Hey, Hey, It's Saturday, are we? Oh, I wouldn't have thought that.
We've got Dick O'Neill. He was in the shop twice today.
Very, very good. Dick O'Neill. No one knows who you're talking about. You realise that, don't you? Who are you talking about, old son?
I'm talking about Dicko, a regular shop customer, and also someone who comments on the show live from week to week. I don't know if he's here tonight. Has he said hi?
I haven't seen him. So there you go.
He probably can't reach the keyboard.
Good on you. Thomas has said it's the best night of the week, probably because there's other things on TV other than us, and like your Master Chefs and your Dancing with the Nerds and all sort of stuff. So I can't imagine it would be us. But if it is, Mr. Thomas, then that is absolutely fantastic to hear. Unbelievable. Now, before we move on, is there anything you want to mention about anything before? That's just bad English. Before we move on, I just said that. So you're good to go?
I think we're good to go.
Very, very good. Now, you had a dude come into the store this week. So for those people who don't know, Aaron runs his own collectible store. And you had a dude who checked out the ultra rare, super exclusive, one-off only Naboo starfighter from The Mandalorian. What was the deal with that?
So this is crazy for anyone who watched a couple of weeks ago. We did a how to improve your Star Wars collectibles little skit where we took an original episode 1 Naboo fighter and converted it into the N1 from The Mandalorian, actually the Book of Boba Fett, but let's just call it what it is, The Mandalorian. And I took it into the shop yesterday and it hadn't even been displayed, and this customer said, oh, how much have you got on that? And I said, oh, I haven't put it out yet. And I said, it's $99 and it sold straight away.
You actually sold it, did you?
Yep.
Unbelievable. Now, for those who were wondering, when it was originally in the store in its unblemished condition, how much did you have on it?
$49.
See, this out there is the reason why we produced this video, how to increase the value of your Star Wars collectibles, right? So people thought we did this as a joke, but in actual fact, we did it to produce ultra rare merchandise. And if you want to find that video, it's still available. You need to go to the YouTube channel, the Sci-Fi Zone YouTube channel, and the video is still there. How to increase the value of your Star Wars collectibles. That is absolutely unbelievable. So you've actually sold the ultra rare one-off, like Naboo.
I have to point out, it was $49 without the Mandalorian, which I taped to the front, which is probably worth another $20. Also, the guy did say he is going to open it and he is going to customize it into the Mandalorian version.
Jeez, and you know what? He'll resell it for a couple of $1,000. So there you go. Christy's agreed. Yeah, what that is a true collector. How about that? That is absolutely unbelievable. So you watch. Everybody now is going to be watching that video. Oh my God, how can I increase the value of my collectibles? That's the way to do it. Thomas has confirmed that no, he's actually happy this day of the week because of us. So there you go. Our job is to entertain, and I think this particular day, entertainment is actually very much needed. Yeah, Rusky Babes, you're right. Previously, I'd rip it off the card, and it was. So it was about 2 or 3 episodes ago. You can actually see Aaron physically modify that chip, or just watch that video as we said. Look at this one. Wave 2 of Rip It Off the Card pops ready for next week from the Vile Enterprises. So does that mean the Vile is going to be violating more of our people from this show? What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
The Vile is spreading his vile tentacles all over the internet with different commercial ventures, isn't he, at the moment?
I'll tell you what, you're not wrong. And Rusky Babes has said, yep, 49 to 99, there's a touch of evil in all of us. That's capitalism with a capital C, if you don't mind, umpire. And of course, speaking of capitalism, we've got to talk about collectibles, what's happening in the big wide world. So let's not muck around. Let's get straight into it. All right, so what are we talking about tonight, Mr. Aaron?
It's more of a discussion tonight, but before we get on to the discussion part of things, there's a new hot toy coming out that I'm quite impressed with. Now, I don't know if anyone watched Peacemaker. It was on over the last 8 weeks, an episode at a time. Now, usually with the war between Marvel and DC, Marvel is usually the clear winner, but I actually thought Peacemaker was one of the best superhero TV shows I've ever seen. Now, it is a bit more adult, maybe in the sort of Deadpool kind of humor and sort of vibe of things. And it has got a bit of the Guardians of the Galaxy music going on with it. But Deadpool is the character from Suicide Squad 2, played by John Cena, the wrestler. And they made him the character, the Peacemaker, and he has now got his own TV show, and it was so successful it's going into series 2. And this is the hot toy. Now, they did an amazing job of the hot toy, but they did one thing that I really can't forgive them for, and that's they've done him with his mouth open, and you can have his mouth open, and he comes with an extra tongue accessory, so you can put his tongue in his open mouth or have him just open-mouthed, but they didn't give him a neutral face, which kind of is a bit weird because, you know, if someone has a set and they want to put all their figures out, not all of them want like action, mid-scream, tongue out, ready to rock Peacemaker barreling down the shelf at their other toys. It is a great likeness. It is one of those where they've really made it look like a mini version of him. It comes with some amazing accessories, including his pet trained eagle, Eagly, which is a nice little accessory to have with a hot toy. It will be, of course, it's one of the premium hot toys, so it's coming out at around $480. What do you think, Dags? Did you watch Peacemaker?
No, not yet. I have heard about it, and I know it's on like one of the streaming services that I got access to, but I haven't actually had a look yet. I've been currently watching The Expanse, which everybody was raving about on the last series of shows that I produced. So I guess I'll give Peacemaker a bit of a burl once The Expanse is done, and that might be another couple of weeks away. So, yeah, all very groovy. But it was good that because when I saw the show come up, I go, okay, then I saw this thing come up. I go, oh, because I remember you discussing it, and some people have brought up the program previously. So, very good.
Yeah. So if you haven't watched it, I'd do yourself a favor and check out that one.
Do yourself a favor. There you go. I like this one from... there was a question that came up. We're talking about Pops, right? And Christy made a mention here of Pop of Spank and the Monkey. And, of course, if people are out there wondering, what the hell is she talking about? It's this. So there you go.
Because on this show, you can never get enough Spank and the Monkey.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right, very, very good. Because yeah, everybody's talking to each other here. They're having these massive. Sorry,
Dags. Hey, it's Saturday didn't have Spank and the Monkey.
they did not. So there you go. That's our pop-up. Instead of having Dickie Nee, it's Spanking the Monkey. Although his acting skills are a lot to be desired. What can I say? Eh?
Yeah. Well, our next piece of news is an interesting little thing that it's not really a toy. It's an event that's happened here in Australia. It's not a good event. For those who collect, it's come as a bit of a surprise that Icon, which is the major distributor of most pop culture toys in Australia, has announced the last couple of weeks that they've dropped the entire NECA range. And they have cited they've dropped the range because NECA have been unreliable, unable to supply enough products that they've pre-ordered, and then they've sold it and not being able to supply stuff themselves. They've not been good in customer service with being able to return damaged goods, and a lot of stuff has turned up damaged, actually missing stuff or broken within the actual packet. So I don't know if this is a sudden thing or something they've been thinking of doing for a long time, but they've actually come out and said they are dumping NECA and they will no longer be getting NECA products to distribute in Australia. Now, this is going to have a huge impact on Australian collectors because NECA does a lot of toy lines, from Ninja Turtles to horror to Gremlins and to Back to the Future and Ghostbusters and a whole lot of stuff in between. The upshot of this means you probably still are going to be able to order the stuff, but a lot of it will be from overseas, meaning the prices is going to double instantly. And if local retailers can get it, it will probably be more expensive because instead of having someone like Icon, whose retail arm is pop culture, being able to buy a pallet load of stuff, you'll get a shop like me that can buy a box load of it. So you're looking at the shipping of a box load of stuff rather than a pallet load of stuff, which means per item, the price of importing them is going to skyrocket. Now, this might have happened for a number of reasons. It might be a mixture of COVID and the economy not being as strong as they thought. They've also cited that they were disappointed that although they had the Australian distribution rights, that they have found NECA has been supplying other people and been supplying collectors directly. Now, this is one of those issues which is hard to get around because if you're a collector and you order from Icon and Icon then can't supply you, and NECA, who produces the product, is offering the product directly from them, you're probably going to order directly from NECA because you might stand a better chance of getting the product. But that means it undermines the Australian distributor, and now they have dropped the actual line, which means it's going to be harder to get everything for everyone. Now, what do you think about this, Dax?
It's tough. Business arrangements are always fickle at the best of times. Sometimes, and we've seen this throughout history, some things that seem to be locked in place like for eternity and like the greatest thing ever, something will go wrong somewhere and a plug is pulled. And the perfect example off the top of my head is like when Toys R Us existed, and it was like a global franchise that suddenly isn't there anymore. And people say, well, where all the toys I used to get from Toys R Us, where do I go now if I can't go there? There's always two perspectives, and unfortunately the consumer always loses out. It's just the way the world turns. And there's obviously, as you said, there's probably a commercial reason for it, and unfortunately, it's just the way it goes. But by the same token, when a player drops out of the game, it gives a chance for someone else to step into that space and fill the void, whether they do it as well or not as well, or whether they can still fulfill the requirements of collectors without charging them 4 or 5 times as much as what they would normally. It's hard to say, but it's obviously not a good thing. But yeah,
the sad thing for me is, when I was growing up, and this would be the same for you, if you wanted to get a pop culture collectible, you couldn't go to Chadstone or Eastlands or whatever and walk into a Zing or even Kmart or Big W and buy something like that. There was a handful of specialty shops in Melbourne, which was Minotaur Books and Alternate Worlds, and there was a place called Heaven and things like that. And it might be going back to that way, except there could be another reason why Icon has dropped NECA, and I don't know if anyone has noticed this because this is something I have definitely noticed. There are some other retailers in Victoria that have started really pushing the popular culture collectibles, and one of them that I have noticed, and definitely over Christmas, was JB Hi-Fi. Now, JB Hi-Fi, they're in the entertainment business, and they've been doing, you know, records and tapes and CDs and videos and Blu-rays forever. But probably a couple of years ago, I started noticing, you know, they might have a pile of pop vinyl figures, or they might be getting some posters or some. The first time I noticed it, I think it was posters and diaries and mugs and stuff like that. Sort of the things they had around their counter that you might just impulse buy on the way out. But now, I went into JB Hi-Fi to pick up the latest Duran Duran CD, and they didn't have it. And their CD collection has probably a quarter of what it used to be maybe 18 months ago. And they could order it in for me, and it took about 6 weeks to get, even though it was released and out. But now they've got rows and rows of toys and pop culture collectibles. And if someone with the buying power of JB Hi-Fi is parallel importing from all the big distributors overseas, guess conceivably, I don't know this is speculation, Icon might have an issue with that because they're no longer exclusive.
Another thing to be aware of, there's a few comments, and we'll sort of have a look at them in a minute. Another thing to be aware of too is that if a product enters the market, and I'm being very general here, and it takes years to find its feet, and then one day it seems to be just like monopolized throughout the market, if that makes any sense at all. Competition invariably comes in. This is the JB bit that I'm coming from. And before you know it, if somebody somewhere, the bean counter is going to go, hey, there's this entire market that's monopolized by this group over here. We need to get our foot in the door as well. And what it's saying in very, very simple terms is that, like JB, as an example, are saying, well, actually, there is a market for this pop culture material. Maybe it wasn't so viable for us 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even last week, but today it is. And as a result, they've done their numbers and they go, you know what, if we enter the market, we can actually grab a slice of this pop culture pie. And there's a comment here very quickly. Russell has said about the fact that maybe Blu-rays and DVDs and things, which were JB's staple, aren't as popular anymore. So obviously the bean counters would have to say, well, okay, if our core market or our core product is starting to drop off, we'll have to look at something else. Oh, this stuff over here seems to be really popular and these stores are selling it. We need to get it. We need to get a foot in the door for that. They'll buy products cheap. They'll sell them cheap, undercut everybody else. And before you know it, people go to JB Hi-Fi for their pop culture stuff. That's very general, but that's typically how things work.
That's capitalism, and that's an open market, and that's absolutely true. The thing is, though, Icon would have had an exclusive deal with NECA. And to explain that, people probably haven't guessed, but I'm a bit of a Doctor Who fan. Now, I buy all the Doctor Who stuff for the shop through Icon. Now, if Icon don't get a product, I am not allowed to then import it myself and, you know, get a import deal with character options that make the toys, because Icon have the exclusive license in Australia, and that's how a lot of these licenses work. Now, I can understand if NECA said you have the exclusive license for stuff, and then millions of them turn up in JB Hi-Fi, because I tell you, over Christmas, they had like the JB sales. JB, you've done it again. Mm. They were selling some of the figures for cheaper than I could buy them for wholesale. So that really shows you how much of the market they've undercut.
And that's how business, and that's the thing ultimately, and regardless of how you look at it, business is business, right?
Yeah.
And eventually, I mean, you think of all the things that you buy all the items that you buy from wherever you buy them from. Once upon a time, those places didn't exist. You had to get products from somewhere else. Then suddenly someone enters the market and you go, oh, I'm going to go to these guys because they're really good. They build up a great reputation, and away you go. Now, JB already have the reputation. They've been around for decades. So if they were to enter this market, undercut everybody else, then you'll find people, without even thinking about it, will go, well, I'll just go straight to JB because I know it's there. I know it's cheap. And ultimately, regardless of how loyal you may have been to previous sellers, you're just going to go, well, I'm going to follow the dollar. And that's just how it works. And we see it in business, you see it all the time. So things unfortunately come and go. And a year from today, you'll look at NECA and go, who are they? They're out of the picture now. They've just been replaced by somebody else. And that's just how the nature of the business works.
Never in my life did I think I would walk into JB Hi-Fi and see a better selection of Star Wars figures than Minotaur books. But there you go.
Well, I mean, you mentioned about like I've got a slide here, like EB Games. They're not just selling games anymore. They're also in the pop culture side of things, yeah?
Well, this is one of the things where Russell has actually hit the nail right on the head. EB Games, about 10 years ago, decided, or their bean counter said, you know what? In 10 to 20 years, there is going to be no more physical media. So we're not going to have anything to sell. and they didn't want to go out of business. So they actually shifted their focus and turned themselves from just a gaming store into a pop culture store. Now, Zing is owned by EB Games, and Zing was an offspring of EB Games sort of doing a pop culture store because they were instantly so popular. It was selling enough to actually open stores. And you will notice in a lot of shopping centers, there was an EB Games store and a Zing store. Now the EB Games and Zing stores are actually being merged because the gaming side of stuff isn't making as much money as the pop culture side of stuff. So it is definitely a business decision. And I think this is what's happened in JB Hi-Fi, where they've said in 10 to 20 years, all those racks of DVDs and Blu-rays and CDs won't be there. So what can we do to keep that area fresh and selling stuff?
In the grand scheme of things, for the most part, the consumer wins for the most part, right? It's like Coles, Woolworths, Aldi, all that stuff, right? If there's enough competition, all selling exactly the same product, they're going to fight against each other. And the consumer, like a person like you, will go, well, okay, I want one of these. They're in 15 different stores, 15 different chains. I'll go to the cheapest one, right? And they'll all fight against each other. And of course, you as the consumer wins. Where the consumer loses is when you've got exclusive items that just aren't that common. And you are right, high-end products that are so expensive that it's not in JB, using the example, not in JB's market, not in their strategy to say, well, okay, we'll buy an item, 5 items at $1,000 a pop. They may not do that. And that's where high-end collectors will miss out. And unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. And then they've got to source their products elsewhere and probably pay more for them. But general stuff, yeah, it'll be a bit of a free-for-all. And you watch, people be going, mate, this is awesome. And go to JB. Haven't been to JB for yonks because no one's bought Blu-rays and DVDs, as was mentioned earlier. But, hey, now you want a Batman figure or a Superman figure, boof, off to JB you go.
There's just one more thing about all this I'll mention before we move on, and that is the difference between somewhere like Icon that deal with pop culture and JB Hi-Fi that are sort of a mass marketing shop is if you go to Icon, I want one of every wave and these figures. Icon know what you're talking about. If you want to rely on JB Hi-Fi, you can go up to the person working there and say, I want a Grand Admiral Thrawn, and they will have no idea what you mean. And you say, will you be getting this wave in? And they go, we're just put out what we're given. So going from a reliable system where Icon would distribute every wave of every figure and get everything that was available out to the collectors, it's going to be potluck, and it's going to be back to people running around to stores and seeing which waves come into what store and what figure is available, which is fun for some people who like the hunt, but an absolute pain in the ass for collectors who want one of everything. So it'll be interesting to see a year from now how the market has settled without Icon distributing NECA stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that's the thing you do lose. You lose the specialty side of it. And some people will hate it because they'll think, I used to love dealing with people who knew their stuff and knew their products and the products were great, as opposed to your Woolworths version of JB Hi-Fi. It's the nature of the beast. But the fact that the whole thing changed, it doesn't surprise me. But you never know where, if, as I said earlier, if there's a gap in the market, and I don't mean by JB, but someone else may step in and fill it. And all of a sudden, because clearly, if anything, the lesson to be learned from all this is that pop culture collecting is a growing industry and everybody is aware of it now. If your big chains are getting involved, then they're obviously sitting there thinking, yes, people are buying this stuff now more than they used to, and they want a part of it. So there you go.
That's the reason why if you go into Target or Big W and you go to the toy section, half of them are toys for kids and half of them are, oh, look, it's Transformer reissues, it's Star Wars reissues, it's Turtle reissues, it's toys for the adults, you know?
One thing I do, we're going to move on. One thing I do like, I like the fact that the vial actually refers to himself in the third person. The vial is a JB Hi-Fi bong, remember? Absolutely love it. Now, there's a lot of comments here, but we do have to move on. But ultimately, yes, you are right. There's been a change in the biz, and that's the way it is now. So, so speaking of things that are changing, there's this.
Useless pop of the week!
All right, let's go.
Okay, so when you have a franchise and it is known for doing a certain thing, if you make images or toys of that franchise, it would be pretty useless if they didn't do what that franchise is popular for, or even be recognizable to some people for being part of that actual franchise. Now, the pop we've chosen this week is this samurai robot looking pop. And at first look, I thought it was probably something from maybe a manga show or something like that. But no, that's an Autobot drift from Transformers. And without the box, I'm telling you, look, I might not be up with every version of Transformer, but that looks nothing like a Transformer. And do you know what that transforms into, Dags?
A nerd.
A useless pop. Because why would you make a pop of a Transformer, a toy that is famous for transforming, and it doesn't really look like anything I know from Transformers, and it doesn't transform? Do you know what it transforms? It transforms into your money going into the bin.
The self-defeating Transformer, is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah.
I love it.
The only Transformer that's not more than meets the eye. It's exactly what you see.
Yeah, there we go. I could transform into a lump of plastic for free. Absolutely fantastic. You're right. It's like take the Transformers logo off it. It could be anything. So, and what's with the drift? I mean, like, is that like supposed to be a Fast and the Furious kind of thing? Is it?
I think Drift was one of the characters from the new movies. I don't remember Drift being a classic Transformer line. Some of the other pops, I'll give them that they look like Transformers, but this dude didn't look like a Transformer that I knew to me. The color schemes of it are bad. If it's from the movie or something, you can blame the designers there, but light green face and blue highlights like Tron and thing, it isn't anything that I would be proud of to have in my Transformer collection, that's for sure.
Rusky Babes has asked for a Transformer that changes from me to you. So what's the deal with that?
Yeah, I don't know, Transformer double adapter or something.
Just not good. So there you go. Looks like a good pop to represent what? Wowsy. I don't know what Wowsy is, but yes, very good. Here we go. Mark has got it. Yeah, just need a Bunsen burner and JB sell them as well. Absolutely love it. So there you go. Very, very good. A useless pop of the week. Absolutely. A Transformer that doesn't transform, that nobody's ever heard of. Absolutely fantastic. But we're going to be showing you something that people have actually heard of before. It was World of Warcraft. I don't know what the extra C was at the end, but there you go. All right, so let's move on. The Soul Greg King. What's going on, Mr. Aaron?
Well, the Soul Greg King is back on the hunt. He's been into the shop this week and checked out some of the things that have come through from his collection and given my display the Soul Greg King stamp of approval. We'll see more of that later, though. But he's been on the hunt, and one of the rarest and most, I guess, valuable props from movies ever to be sold at auction is, of course, the Maltese Falcon. Now, the Maltese Falcon is a famous movie, and it's one of those movies that even if you haven't seen it, you must have heard of its reputation. It would be one of those movies that's sort of jumped generations just because of its reputation. Maybe the current generation of kids might not know the Maltese Falcon. You know the Maltese Falcon?
Absolutely. Well, Sam Spade makes the appearance, and of course, the thing about the Maltese Falcon, in the Maltese Falcon, it was a fake Maltese Falcon, so it wasn't the real thing at all. But you can get two versions. You can get the version of the bird like that, or you can just wrap it up in paper, and that's the other version you can have. So here you go.
That would be a much cheaper one. The great thing about the Maltese Falcon, if we get a fake version, they can just say it's even more accurate to what was on the screen.
Yeah, and you put scratch marks in it as well, and that'll make it even more and more accurate because I tried to scratch it. But anyway, what are we talking about the Maltese Falcon, Mr. Aaron?
Well, we found a Chinese seller that has a cheap prop replica of the Maltese Falcon. Now, all of these on Etsy and on eBay are going for many hundreds of dollars. And I think this was like $49, reduced to $29 with free postage or something like that. So I thought, do you know what? This is definitely going to arrive and going to be exactly what we expected it to be. So I put one in for Greg to inspect when we get it, and hopefully when it comes, it won't come in a tiny envelope with a little tiny necklace. It will actually have the Maltese Falcon replica, and that would be a great piece to have in the shop.
Yep, totally agree with you. So, so we're going to await that one with bated breath, and surely it can't be any more fake than the real fake, that's bad English, real fake Maltese Falcon from the movie. So there we go. I like this. Yes, a genuine, 100% genuine fake Maltese Falcon.
Now, do you think the Soul Greg King has ordered this and rested on his laurels this week?
I don't know. So why? What do we got?
Well, he has ordered this, and what was amazing, when he ordered this, we had to browse through what else this company had to sell, And they weren't just selling Maltese Falcons. They had a plethora of cheap, crappy, too good to be true prop replicas and other amazing things that you could buy. So going from the first half of last century with the Maltese Falcon, we also ordered something else from them. Do you think you could guess what we ordered?
No, but I do want people to realize with the Maltese from this place. Can you read that? The accuracy of this is amazing, down to the Falcon's asymmetrical sneer. The stuff that dreams are made of, this thing is really cool. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, I put those up there because they were actually testimonials from people who had ordered this Maltese Falcon and had left comments on the website because, you know, obviously the first thing you do when you get like a product from overseas is find the website and leave comments on it. Like that other one there, I am enjoying this replica movie prop greatly. It looks the part and is, to my eye, very accurate to the prop, which would be good because if you're buying a prop replica, you would want it to be accurate to the prop.
Yeah, wouldn't it be funny if you said, "Oh, it looks the part," and to my eye, it looks completely different to the prop? Oh dear. Very, very good. All right, so we've got Maltese Falcons on one corner, and on the other corner, we're going completely different.
So yes, we're coming right up to date, and we're going to New Zealand because Humphrey Bogus. Yes, we're going to New Zealand, and we're looking at the Hobbit, or the Lord of the Rings, more precisely, the home where the hobbits live in the Shire. Now, this is I guess it's like a terrarium. It isn't real plants, but it's been handmade with all the plants detailed in to look exactly like a replica of the home from the Lord of the Rings. And I haven't got a picture of it here, but it actually comes under a big bell jar as well. So it comes under cover. It's got great detail. It's got the inside of the house that you can look at from the back, and then it's got the big door you can look at the front. It's even got a replica of the tree that grows above Bilbo's house, and then it's got his garden with miniature flowers and miniature vegetables and things like that growing in it. So I thought that was quite a nice item, and it's totally different from the Maltese Falcon. So we're giving them a bit of a challenge where we're really looking at their artistic in ideals to see how good they can create this. But I thought this was interesting. It was from the guy that runs this this site. The goods are real and effective. Buying goods online can be a daunting task. So we want you to realize that there is absolutely no risk in buying and trying. If you do not like it, please don't be sad. We will do it right. If you do not have a positive experience for any reason, we will make every effort to ensure you are 100% satisfied with the product and purchase. Now, I already am recognizing that kind of speech from many conversations we've had now online. Did you notice they don't say that they will refund you? Did you notice they don't say that they will give you a replacement if you aren't happy?
Well, they should have said, if you're not happy with the purchase, don't worry, because the necklace can be worn just about anyway. I love this one. Yeah, it's not bag end, it's bad end. Absolutely love it. Oh, goodness gracious me. So there you go. Very, very cool. So we got a bit of bag end stuff going on from the Shire, and we got the Maltese Falcon, which is particularly groovy, and we got these other things you want to show as well.
Now, this is interesting because the Soul Greg King, like I said, had a plethora of stuff to choose from. Now, some of the other stuff that I could have bought, a real taxidermied mouse that is made to look like the Joker. So that is a real, it's the name says it all, it's a dead mouse.
Actually, it needs to have this thought bubble. Why so serious?
The mouse has ceased to be. But continuing on with the theme, you've got Aunt Bethany's dead cat from European Christmas Vacation, which comes with like burnt marks all over it, smoke around the edge, and also like the Christmas lights from the Christmas tree. Now, these are two of the things that the Soul Greg King could have ordered from this shop as well. As you could see, there was a multitude of riches to choose from, but he thought maybe this was even too bad taste even for his subject, for his segment on the show. So they were some of the things we could have got, but we've left it. I don't know if a dead mouse would have got through customs anyway.
There's probably a lot of jokes that can go with it. So you want You want to hustle up the postage so you can actually hear it go, I'm under the yippa yippa.
And I don't know if you could put the mouse and the cat in the same package anyway.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Absolutely fantastic. All right. So apparently now for everybody out there, right, it's like the Soul Greg King does take an interest in what is being purchased here, right? Because, it's not just Aaron doing it all. Oh, geez. So the Soul Greg King did actually need to check out the items that he's purchased. And what was his thoughts about it all, Mr. Aaron?
Well, he was impressed. He was impressed because he knows by us using his name and his image that we have been able to go out into the World Wide Web and protect people from getting these dodgy things. I can't repeat what he said that he thought of them when he saw them, but he was proud to put them in our display of Greg King's cheapest things, which is in the shop if you ever want to come in and take a look. Now, last year we had the table of thrift, and we've kind of eliminated that because it took me too much time to work it out every week. So what we have done, we've introduced a new character to the show, and this is a beauty. This is Greg King's seal. It's his seal of disapproval. So Greg King was able to give these two objects, these two collectibles, his seal of disapproval. So any week where we get anything dodgy that doesn't live up to the specifications of the sellers that have sold with descriptions they've given us, we will show them to Greg King's seal, and if they're not any good, he'll give us the seal of disapproval.
Now, for anybody watching this episode, they'd be thinking, geez, that Aaron has clearly got way too much time on his hands, and you are absolutely correct. And the look on his face, you could put 1,001 thought bubbles on top of that seal, couldn't you? So absolutely fantastic. So
yes,
absolutely.
So yes, thank you again to the Soul Greg King for introducing us to his pet, who will help grade and judge everything that comes throughout the year. So here we have Greg King's garage sale. We've slowly been adding stuff. Greg King of the Impossible, for everyone who realizes that quote. And he will be a fixture, and he's already got stuff for next week. So if you thought this stuff was great, wait until you see the amazing things that are coming up next week. Haven't got anything to reveal this week. Everything's still in transit. Our Books of the Dead that were sent from Canberra must have got caught up in the protests because we haven't got anything yet.
Yeah, good on you. So it's pretty funny. So the Maltese Falcon, we hope, comes in paper, and then we'll just hide it around the shop because there's obviously got to be a bit of a search to find it, which is a cool thing. And Hobbiton. So we'll have to see what a little Bilbo looks like or a little Frodo when they turn up. So absolutely magnificent. But more important than the Soul Greg King coming into Aaron's store and checking out for himself what everything looks like and what his opinions are, something more important. And of course, it's got to be this. It's time for the Vile File.
I know. And this year's been great because I think so far Lord Vile hasn't had to come up with anything for himself yet because we've got so many viewers that have been sending us things in. And this follows on from last week's, actually. We don't have these viewers live, but obviously someone watches us after the show's screened, and this must be one of those people. So I don't know if you remember last week we had a mother asking about her daughter's birthday party, and she was so impressed with our show that she sent us a follow-up message.
Yes, indeed. So if you might remember, she has her daughter Chantel wanted to have a party, and we got some clowns organised, but now it's time for this.
Dear Master Vile, my daughter Chantel and I watched the episode and have decided to use your service to plan her frozen birthday party. Can you also arrange a cake? From Debbie. Now, this is interesting because we did do an episode on cakes last year, which was quite vile. But Lord Vile has managed to out-vile himself and find even more vile cakes for little Debbie's birthday party, including an amazing frozen one.
It's Chantel's party, you idiot, not Debbie. Debbie's the one sending. Debbie's the mother, and Chantel's the kid. So there you go. So we're looking at birthday cakes that are going to be suitable for Chantel's party.
So you might not know this, but Lord Vile actually does cakes and does things for many different occasions, for birthday parties, weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs, because he has his own chef. And that chef is actually someone quite close to him. Who would have known that one of the top chocolatiers, pastry professionals, is the little Boba Frick there. So if you want your cake fricked, you can go to Lord Vile and hire him to get Boba Frick to make a cake. Now, any cake you send him a picture of, he will be able to do a fricked version that is almost you can almost not tell the difference between the two.
Do you even know what you were trying to say? It's Babu Frick. Get it right. It's not Boba Frick. There you go. And I like how you can get Frick to make your cake. I mean, you got to be very careful about how you say those words. But anyway, so the Vile turned to Babu, right, and said, Babu, Chantel needs a birthday cake. Dude, go out there and whip one up. And of course, the Frick boy did exactly as Frick boys do, and whipped one up. Even I can't get the words out.
So we gave Babu Frick a picture of the castle cake, and with a Frozen theme. He changed a little bit, but I'm sure you will see that it is still an impressive cake for a little girl's birthday party. He's done 2 different versions there. He's done a pink version in the middle with 3 massive parapets. And then he's done a smaller pink version on the end there. And I like that one because each guest can take their own parapet home to play with later. So...
there's some really bad stuff to be said right here, but I'm just going to move right. I like this one. Yeah, the price is missed. Oh dear! And there's little Babu, the old Frick himself. He's admiring his handiwork. Is that right?
Yeah, he's very impressed with his handiwork. It's one of those. Yeah, one for Chantel and one for Debbie, and like party favors for everyone to take home.
Unbelievable.
Now, here he is showing 2 cakes, and like we said, he can do cakes for any occasion, not just birthday cakes. So he doesn't just do little girls' cakes. He does boys' cakes as well. There's this rocket one, and there's also a football cake, which is for Super Bowl. So he's managed to have a go at these, and I think his versions are much better than the originals. So the top one there is twice as good as the original because it actually has 2 rockets on, and they have the pink tips to them, just like the one on the official version does. And his version is a lot cheaper. But the best one there of all, he's got right to the point, and rather than putting a football, in case you didn't realize what it was, he's actually written the event. So there you've got your Super Bowl cake.
It's a chocolate cake too, is that right? So there you go.
So when you had when you watched the Super Bowl, did you have a Super Bowl cake for you and your friends when they came over?
Well, Moneybag Sullivan was supposed to join me, and the shit didn't turn up, so that was definitely a Super Bowl.
So you got to eat the whole bowl cake yourself.
And look what I say, it went down real well. And oh dear. Anyway, we move on.
So here's a pretty unicorn cake, and he's been given the challenge. This is quite a hard one to replicate because it has many different styles and different techniques. So he tried 2 different goes to get this one correct, and I think you'll be impressed with both of them.
Yeah, it was hard. Yeah, good on you.
So the one that's on the bottom there is a detailed look at the unicorn's head. I like to call it the Godfather take of a horse's head for a little girl's party. And then there's these other unicorn cakes that are going around now. I don't know if you've seen them, where they put the eyes on the front of the cake and the ears and then the horn. Now, he has been very, very creative with the horn there. It's more of like a whirly, swirly horn than a pointed unicorn horn. But again, it's one of those things that at a birthday party, all the girls fight over who gets the horn. And some of the guys.
Yeah, it's not like the dunking for apples sort of thing, is it? The game where they all get to go at the same time. So, jeez.
Now, here's one. We've got a regular here, Gavin, who loves the Jedi Master Yoda. Now, that is actually a cake, and that is a very impressive cake. That, if you weren't told that was a cake, you could think that was a mini statue or something, couldn't you? Now, Babu Frick has fricked this cake really, really well. He's done 2 different versions of it, and both of them are equally as impressive. Both of them have added a lightsaber. Now, by adding the lightsaber, it really brings out, like, I guess, action and intrigue and Jedi Force to the cakes. So that's one. If you were having something like a Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark dinner, you could do a lot worse than giving one of those cakes on the middle of every table for people who wanted to go and celebrate the Force 5 event, couldn't you?
Well, he looks like he's obviously very excited about it. So, yes, exactly right. And as we know, Yoda likes to munch on his gimmer stick. So if you want to reenact that, knock yourselves out. There you go. To see Yoda. Oh, geez. It's just a birthday cake. Everybody get your minds out of the game. Jeepers creepers.
And
dear. It actually looks like Mel Brooks.
We have to point out all of these cakes are 100% genuine and real. These are not ones that have been made up. Now, here's something interesting. This is a Masters of the Universe cake, and this came from a Masters of the Universe cake tin. So anyone with a bit of talent can whip up the cake and put it together, but it takes someone with Babbo Frick's expertise to come up with what he's come up with. And there's a multi-storied Toy Story birthday cake, and he's had his own take on Toy Story as well. Both of them look equally delicious. Now, the He-Man one we would call, I guess, minimalist. It didn't really go over as well as the original on that one. But the Woody cake there is amazing, with that chocolate trowel that goes around all the cake to where Woody is sitting down. That's a cake that actually tells a story. It looks like Woody maybe. It looks like Woody maybe ate one of the other cakes, and then that's what happened on the top of his cake because he ate one of the other ones.
With the He-Man one at the top, yeah, that comes under the heading of whoever made it said, you know what, I just can't get it to look like the one in the picture. Oh dear. Woody couldn't find the outhouse. Yeah, absolutely. Woody ate the bell cake. Oh, geez, Louise, that's a shit. Oh God, it's killing me. Anyway,
I don't know
what?
I don't know if the cakes have been fricked or violated this week.
That's not a snake in his face. Oh, geez, Louise. So what? Anyway, keep going.
Well, here's a couple more just to finish off. In America, I think everyone knows they celebrate Thanksgiving, and one of the things they celebrate with is turkeys. And so we've got a Thanksgiving Day cake here, and we've also got just some hedgehogs that are like little animals, like little porcupines, and just to show that he can make naturalistic cakes as well. So let's have a look at his turkey cake and his hedgehog cakes. Now, it's interesting because he has obviously not made a turkey. He's made a male chicken, or as it's actually called, a cock. And the hedgehog there, that's a pretty scary hedgehog. But I do love how he's used the real Alan's teeth to make it look a bit more realistic.
Oh, my goodness gracious me. What do you think of those, eh? Imagine munching down on those things. Absolutely fantastic. Oh, goodness gracious me.
I think out of all of them, I think we should send the hedgehog to Chantel, because I'm sure all her friends will love that one.
Yeah, she'll have plenty to pick from. That's the most important thing. So, yes, absolutely fantastic. It should focus on meth, exactly right.
It actually looks like that hedgehog is drowning in a sea of Woody's howdy doody.
Oh dear. So what are you trying to say about all these particular cakes here, Mr. Aaron?
Well, the Viles patisserie has taken some lovely designs, changed them around, and they have been well and truly violated.
Absolutely fantastic. Oh my goodness gracious me. So The good thing will be that Debbie will be able to organise for Chantel the party. Got the clowns, got the cake. What else do you need for your party there, Mr. Aaron?
I'm really hoping that next week we just get back to toys that look like dicks.
Oh, dear,
So anyone who wants to send in the vial a challenge, we throw down the gauntlet. It's going to be harder to beat the last 2 weeks, isn't it?
Yes, all you need now is for the clowns to turn up carrying one of those cakes. People out there can sort of determine which clown would be carrying which cake. So, yes, and you are right, Mr. Mark. There's some stiff competition with that lot. There's no denying that at all. So, very, very good. All right, we need to move on. Otherwise, we're never going to get to the end of this episode. Hope everybody's having a good time on what is a particularly miserable week. And we're going to come along with something very, very interesting. So, get your guesses ready because it's time for this.
Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth?
Whew. All right, so what are we talking about tonight there, Mr. Aaron?
Well, the theme of tonight's episode is, I guess, prototypes and Star Wars. So quite naturally on eBay, we're looking at Transformers. And without further ado, here is Cybertron. This is one of the biggest Transformers ever made. We talked about this last year when it came out. It was one of those HasLab projects where it's so big, fans had to pay up front and they had to order a certain number of them before it would go into production. Now, I think I did a report where they turned up at Zing here, and when they were in Zing, I think they were $600. This is a year later. Have they gone up in value, or do you think they've maybe gone down in value?
All right, so give us your thoughts on what you think these sold for. Don't forget, don't cheat, don't Google it. We don't expect anybody to know, but have a bit of fun with the guesses. That's the most important thing. All right, so Carol has said $2. I think it's probably going to go for more than $2, but we'll see what happens. And who normally says $2 has gone for $2.56. Daniel said no, it's Unicron. It says Unicron, so there you go. So it's all good. Chrissy said $1, so she's not very certain about this. 1,500 from Grant. Moneybag Sullivan says 1,600. Carol said 150. Carol, you get two answers. Oh, you've changed your mind, have you? All right, we'll go with the 150. Even Rusky Baby said 150. Mick has said 1,700, and William has said 1,200. Rusky Babes has chucked in 200, and there you go. Andrew said these are massive. We're not talking about the cakes either, or the chickens that we had earlier. Mark has said 1,200, and violating a Unicron is the vial at $350. So there you go. Okay, so it's the Transformers HasLab Wolf for Cybertron Unicron, new sealed with outer box, and it does look quite large because the wingspan alone looks pretty gigantic. How much do you reckon it went for? It went for a whopping, with postage $150. It went for a whopping $2,000, round figures.
So that's pretty good. I did say if you could get them from the shops when they were here, pick one up because that was a pretty good price. The postage is astronomical to get these from overseas. So I'm not surprised they're going for that much. Do you want to pay $2,000 for a Transformer? Well, I'd rather pay for this than the pop version.
Yeah, you beat me to it, actually. Imagine the pop version selling for this. So there you go. The Autobot Drift. So there you go. Mick, you're about $300 short, old son. And that doesn't even include the postage. But there you go. $2,000. Bloody hell. So there you go. Very groovy.
Now, these are a pair of classic Transformers G1, so they're from the 80s. It's Darkwing and Deadwing, which are two Transformers that combine into one. They've got their headmasters with them. They're complete with their guns and everything. So they're a nice little set of vintage Transformers. These are the type of things that you might find in a garage sale, though, because they are from that era where kids collected, played, and then their parents threw stuff out. So could be trash, could be treasure.
Yeah, it's the used description that is a little bit concerning, but they are complete, so that is usually a good sign because, as Aaron will attest to, quite often the bits and pieces, the accessories are the bits that get lost over the decades, and that's what makes the things worth a little bit more. Andrew said $435. Chrissy's gone for $85. Carol's at $345. A lot of 45s here, a lot of 5s. Moneybag Sullivan's at $120. Grant has said $60. Mick has said 650, which is particularly groovy. Williams at 400. Violating these guys is the vial at 750. You're right. Yeah, the postman's on a gold bike because the postage is so high. So there you go. Greg has decided to chuck in $2. That's $1 each, which is particularly groovy. What does everybody think? They could go for a lot or they could go really, really cheap. So what do people think? They are complete, but they are used. Make of that what you will, which is particularly groovy. Right, Transformers Vintage G1 Power Master Darkwing and Dreadwind 100% complete. What do people think? Rusky Babes has said 40. So they went for how much you reckon they went for? They went for a whopping $550. Holy guacamole!
So yeah, the interesting thing about that, I think I've got half of that set in the shop complete for about $69. So that's a pretty good price. If you can find the other half, you instantly almost get 10 times your return for it on eBay. But that one I think went for more than I thought it would go for.
Well, the money that Mick had to cough up for the last one. Yeah, I think Mick got the. Was you got the last one, Mick or Mark? Well, either way, you get some change, which is pretty good. Huh?
I think Mick did. I think that's 2 for 2, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So the money he had to cough up for the last one, he's now saved on this one. So there you go. How about that? $550. Holy guacamole. Bloody big numbers, mate. So there you go. Very, very good. All right, we move on to the next one. Woo, check it out.
So here's 4 Transformers, Titanium, Ultra Magnus, Megabot, Scrap Metal, and Overlord. So it's a bit of a bundle together of Transformers there. So usually when you bundle stuff together, it might go for a bit cheaper because anyone who's after one might not want to buy the other 3, or it might go for more because there could be for 4 there that you actually want.
Very good. So Mick's a bit of a happy camper, or he's got the last 2 by the looks of it, which is particularly groovy. So let's go and check it out. All right. So that was that one there. Hang on. Michael's. All right. And hang on. Sorry. Andrew said 52. Carol's at 501. Christy said 0. Christy, even something has to sell for something. So I'm put another number in if you wouldn't mind. Grant has said 200. Carol's at 359. Mick, who's got the last 2, is at 85. Moneybag Sullivan is at 350. What do you guys reckon? Mark is at 800. Thomas is at 3,000. Oh, I was putting in some dollars there. William is at 450. It's all particularly groovy. So what does everybody think? Christy said a cent. Okay, there's lack of optimism there, good old Christy. I understand it. And violating the Transformers is the vial of 250 bars of gold pressed latinum. So even GPL and know exactly what he's talking about. Nerd. Very, very cool. All right, so 4 Transformers, Titanium, Ultra Magnus, Megabot, Scrap Metal, and Overlord. Okay, we had a couple of really expensive items a few moments ago. Will this be the same? No, it will not, because it only went for $12.
And the crazy thing about that, it had 12 bids. So I thought that was going to go for more than what it actually did.
Everybody is miles over. Funny enough, Christy, your 1 cent probably wasn't that far off. Actually, maybe it wasn't. Actually, Christy, you may actually have this at 1 cent because everybody's in the hundreds of dollars. I'm going to stick with Christy.
There was a $50, but I think Christy's still closest.
Yeah, I think you are, Christy. You put in 1 cent and you got it.
Well done.
How insane is that? So, yeah, that's right. So there you go. Good on you, Christy. Well done. Yeah, we have to cough up an extra. Was it $11 and was it 99 cents? But you're good to go.
And you know what? Greg King didn't chip in his $2, so he didn't win.
Well, there you go. So that just got, yeah, there you go. Unbelievable. Thomas said he lost by the most. Yeah, fair enough. How about that? Well, that'd be rounded down. Absolutely unbelievable. So you can never predict the trend of these, can you? So yeah, Greg's acknowledged, yeah, damn, he's just missed that. So there you go. So Christy put in a bid for 1 cent and she beat everybody. What's the deal with that?
Now, here's an interesting one. This is a G1 Vintage Super God Master Force C311 Grand Maximus. So this is, I think, a pre-Transformer Transformer. So these are the Takara ones before Hasbro took the brand and turned them into Transformers. So this might be a bit more collectible than Transformer. It might not be. I think it has got the Transformer logo, so it could be part of the Transformer range. But this is one of the very big Transformers.
And it says rare. So when they put those rare or exclusive or hard to find or the words of that ilk, and that usually determines there's going to be a bit of a price rise. But we shall see. All right, so Ange has already kicked it off at 790. Mark is at 299. What does everybody else think of this? Mick has said 520. Carol's at 1240. Grant has said 450. So what do you reckon, kiddies? You never know. Mr. Greg, if you want. Oh, Christy's following her previous trend at $1. Williams at 650. Moneybag Sullivan is at 100. What does everybody think? I think Greg is sitting there stressing out. Does he chuck in his $2 or not? What does everybody think? So where are we? Thomas has said 880, which is particularly groovy. G1 Vintage Super God. Vintage is another word that tends to sell things. Yeah, good on you, Greg. He's put in his $2, which is particularly groovy. And the Vile has decided to go for $100. Round figures. Okay, God Master Force C311 Grand Maximus Rare. It's the word rare that sells everything. So how much do you reckon it went for, kids? I reckon it went for a whopping $5,000 effing dollars.
Christy didn't get that one.
Definitely not.
Carol?
Anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I know there's Transformers that go for a lot. I had never seen this one, so probably the rare is justified, but I did not think it would go for $5,000.
That is unbelievable. Well, it's off to Ballarat because it looks like Carol got it. Carol, you still got to cough up an extra, like, was it, what was it? $2,000 or whatever it is. But yeah, you're not even halfway there. So, but either way, good for you. Well done. So how about that, which is particularly groovy. So, mate, good stuff. All right, lucky last. Ooh, here's a challenge for you.
And here we go. I actually had this Transformer growing up. So this is the original Starscream. So you can see it's been AFA graded. For those who know the toy jargon, it has been sent away and independently graded by a grading company. And they've said it's 80, which is, a near mint. So about as good as you're going to get for a toy that's from the 80s. This is Starscream, who is one of the most popular characters and popular jets. This is going to go for a few clams.
I like the description. It's so generic, isn't it? Transformers AFA 80 jets. That's it. Nothing else. So, yeah there you go. Where are we? Carol's obviously very happy that she won the last one. So, well done to you. And let's have a look. And you are right. The previous item, it was only $10 postage, $5,000 to buy it and $10 to send it. All right. So, this one, AFA graded 80 jets. That's all it says. All right. So, Ange has said 50 cents. Oh, I think it's probably a bit optimistic there, Mr. Ange. Grant is at 2,500. Carol's at 590. Thomas is at 7,000. Mick is at 780. Williams at 1,500. Christy's sticking with the $1 Flintstone clams. Clearly, you're not a Transformers fan, Christy, and I get it. The violating the Transformers at 1,701. Michael has said 1,000. Good to see Michael's awake for our show this week as opposed to last week when he piked out halfway through. We're not even 10 minutes in. Moneybag Sullivan is at 500, which is particularly groovy. So there you go. Transformers AFA 80 jets, but it has been AFA graded, as we said. So that alone could end up meaning it's got a few extra bucks added onto it. So from the 80s, which is particularly groovy. All right, how much do you reckon it went for? Excuse me. It went for a whopping. Are you ready for it, kids? Are you ready? $7,000, Thomas. All yours.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. $7,000. Don't you wish you could go back and buy a couple of those from Kmart and stash them in the garage for 30 years?
Isn't that madness? $7,000. And do you think it's because of the grading?
Probably. Transformers do go for a lot if they're sealed and never played with. Transformers are one of those toys, and you would know this when people play with them, they break really easily. So getting them in good condition with all their parts that have survived being played with by kids is very, very hard. Getting them is a genuine one is also very hard because there have been so many knockoffs and so many reissues. So AFA proves it's new, it's genuine, it's Rigi-Dig, it's ready to go, ready to roll, and it went for $7,000.
And Chrissy said, yeah, she's now sorry she didn't steal her brother's toys. So clearly he was the Transformers dude in the household. So there you go. How about that? $7,000. graded or not, that is a lot of money to spend on a Transformer. So there you go.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Very, very good. Now, before everybody decides to sort of like fall asleep, do a Michael Herbert and sort of nod off on us, guess what? It's actually commercial time before we get into our discussion. So this is particularly interesting. So there's been a little bit of advertising for this on Sci-Fi's own Facebook page. But if you've got nothing to do next week, and of course, like the whole world's going to the shit at the moment for whatever reason, and you need something to do on the Monday night, there is actually a new show appearing on Monday evening. It is called A Fan View. There's only going to be 6 episodes of this at this stage. And of course, it is all about a pop culture perspective. And it's going to be airing live next Monday at 8 p.m. And if you're wondering what the topic of conversation will be, we're actually going to be talking about a journey into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the conversation, we'll be bringing in a brand new host. First time this lady will be appearing on screen. So to hear her thoughts, views, and opinions. But we're going to be discussing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how it's pretty much been dominating the cinema screens for the past 10 years and where it's going to go in the future. So if you've got nothing to do on a Monday night, as in next Monday, be sure to check it out. What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
I will definitely be watching and joining in the conversation. I think it'll be a good show. So, yeah, be there.
Be there or be a Skippy the Bush Kangaroo. Is that how it goes?
Something like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It's always good to introduce a new show, and really interesting to hear Sarah's views.
Yeah, so Sarah will be, as I said, a brand new host to the show. She's never been on screen before, so it'll be all new thoughts, views, and opinions from someone who's a lot younger than I am, and it'll be good. So we have some good discussions. Obviously, each week we'll have different topics, and it should be a bit of fun for everyone. So be sure to check it out. What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron? All good?
Dags, everyone's a lot younger than you are.
But, that's a good point, actually. Very, very good. All right, it is now just a sniffle after 9 o'clock, and we're going to discuss our main feature presentation. And what are we discussing tonight, Mr. Aaron?
Now, we've been threatening to do one of these shows for a while. We've done Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi, and during those shows, we'd sometimes touch on like products that weren't released. And I said, but we're not going to look any more into that because later down the track, we're going to look in more detail. So tonight's our first look at unreleased, unproduced Star Wars collectibles. So anyone who collects the original Star Wars stuff, this is going to be particularly interesting because there's a lot of stuff here and some of it you might never have seen before, which is unusual for vintage Star Wars stuff.
Very good. So some of these things you can look at and go, oh, what a shame they didn't make that. And other things you'll be looking at, oh, I'm glad they didn't make it. So a bit of everything. So, but we're going to be a bit of jargon. We're going to be a text we're going to put on the screen, which is going to bore the bejesus out of everybody. But Mr. Aaron, off we go, son.
Dave was texting me today going, oh, this text, you sure you want to do it? And I said, yeah, I nearly did a slide that said so boring so you could put it up. But when we talk about old toys, a lot of people say, prototypes and everything gets lumped into prototypes, and that's not entirely always true. So here's some toy jargon we're going to go through because we're going to look at prototypes. We're going to look at stuff from different stages of production. So just so we know what we're looking at, and there is a bit of text that was mainly so when I put it in galleries after people can read it. I'm just going to sort of go through it and give you a general idea before we get to the colorful, pretty slides.
Very, very good. All right, everybody, fall asleep for the next 10 minutes while we go through this part. Go for it.
So, prototypes. A lot of people say anything that wasn't released or is pre-released is a prototype, and that isn't technically true. A prototype is the very original concept of the design phase of making a toy. So a prototype can be something that's kit bashed, which means put together from other things or made as a sort of proof of concept before any money is put into the production and the toy starts costing money, going into tooling, going into sculpting and things like that. So prototypes often give a kind of conceptual idea to backers or the company of what they're getting themselves into.
Oh, is that it, is it?
Yeah, I told you I'm going to skip through them pretty fast because I don't want it to be boring.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to spot all the spelling mistakes, knock yourselves out.
Concept art. So a lot of stuff starts with concept art, and of course concept art is what originally is put down by designers at the very start of the design process, and it gets the look and the view of what the toy company wants to produce. And again, this goes on and is given to people who make the 3D molds. Often the people doing concept art are shown the prototypes, and then they make a more detailed version of what the toy will look like. And this is concept art for an Imperial outpost that never happened. There's some very cool episode 1 stuff here. There's Jar Jar and Jabba the Hutt sound puppets. So you could put your hand in the sound puppets and they would make Jar Jar and Jabba sounds. There's a Dagobah pencil sharpener and pencil holder, which never went into production, and an Empire Strikes Back Yoda backpack, which was a concept art that never went any further. So that's the kind of concept art. It doesn't mean that the product will be produced, but there's a bit of money put into the design of things by that point.
And it's always important if you've got a Yoda pencil to make sure you've got lead in it. And so always important to have lead in your pencil.
Well, the ones in the cakes did, didn't they? So reference material and specifications. So when we get into actually the nitty gritty and producing the toy, the people who are doing the sculpting are given reference material, and from that, the specifications of what the toy is going to look like. So there you've got the picture of Luke that they were given to make the original Luke Skywalker figure, and then you've got some art that is how the figure is going to look when it's finished. Then you've got the blueprints for what the sculptors have to make the toy in specification 2 before it goes into production. And toy sculpts. Oh, thanks for pointing that out, mate.
I thought I can't even bother trying to fix that, so I'm just going to highlight.
So you've got your clay sculpts, which are the rough sculpts that give an idea and a more rough version of the toy before they go to wax sculpts. And the wax sculpts are more detailed and what goes to make the silicon molds before they make hard copies. So these are all different stages of the pre-production of some of these toys. That's pre-production of the Rancor Keeper, which shows you how many different versions and how many different molds go into it before they settle on a final version.
Yeah, so when you look at these things, they're legs, by the way, kids. You're looking at the back of them. So, don't think there's supposed to be something else.
And so once they've got the wax sculpts, they make the molds, and from the molds come a resin cast or hard copies, and they're the original, really the first versions of when you're finally getting to the toy stage for when they make the actual hard molds and start producing the figures. So finding these are amazing for collectors. There's just one for each toy because all of the molds come off the one thing. So this is the original C-3PO wax hard copy resin cast for what every C-3PO came from.
So I like this one. I'm just going to change. Like it was Rusky Babe said, I can't even pronounce it. Scott is the character from it. Like it was in Garza Phipps Sanctuary Cantina. Probably it might have been the name of the Biff dude playing the guitar. And you could say that, and people would believe it too. So it's very, very groovy. What do you reckon? Yeah?
Yes. Yep.
Rusky Babes, you're thinking about this way too much. No, we're still going through the facts and figures of how this business works, old son.
And then one of the things that a lot of people manage to get their hands on, and often these are called prototypes, they're not really, are the first shots and test shots. So these are what go to the company and are produced, and that's why they're in different colors, because they're tests, and they just use whatever plastic is in the machine to make these amazing test shots. So you can get things that are like multicolored figures that didn't come in the production colors, and then the ones below, you can see they're very close to the original what came out, but they might not have dates or marks of where they were made on them, and that's how you can tell that they're first shots or test shots. So these are some of the different things we're going to be looking at through this episode.
Well, guess what, kids? The good news is we're past all the boring text stuff. Now it's on to the pretty pictures, and of course, when it comes to unproduced and prototype products, you can't go past good old Boba Fett.
So this probably is the most legendary toy of all time. I probably wouldn't be hyperbole, I don't think. I think out of all the unproduced toys that there have been rumors and pictures and stories about, rocket firing Boba Fett is the king of them all. And this is probably the first one we're looking at, not because it's the best, just because it's one of the very first unproduced Star Wars toys. And we've talked about why this was unproduced in our Battlestar Galactica episode. It's because of the rocket that fired out the back of his backpack. And Battlestar Galactica had a very similar mechanism in some of their toys. And one choked a kid and he was taken to hospital. and nearly died, and they didn't change it. And about 3 months later, a kid fired one into his mouth, and it actually choked him and died. And it really was tragic and changed the toy industry. But for Star Wars fan, that is legendary, because this was about to be shipped out, and they had to cancel them being shipped out, change the backs of them, glue the rockets in. Some people had ones that were actually glued in. But the legendary thing about this, there are people who absolutely swear they were sent rocket-firing Boba Fett's, but it is absolutely impossible. None ever went out. It would have been illegal because they changed the toy laws at the time, and no company wanted the public disaster of killing a kid with their product, which basically tanked the Galactica line. Now, here's some of the different test shots, prototypes, and pre-production samples of Boba Fett. And you can see, for a legendary toy that's very hard to get, there was a lot of different versions. Now, these would have been because they were produced, kit bashed, and painted by hand originally. And then there would have been the original sculpts and the wax sculpt there. And then they had hard copies where they did different versions of the rocket firing mechanism. They did the J slot and the L slot, which basically refers to the shape of the slot in the back of the figure that holds the spring that fires the rocket. And they came with little rockets that you could load into the back, and then you could fire them out. Now, obviously, they were very close to releasing this. The toy on the top right hand there that is on the card was only discovered very recently, and that was a toy fair sample that was shown at Toy Fair. So a carded one does exist. There's only one example. Do you want to know how much that one went for on eBay, Dags?
I'm going to say it would buy a house or two.
150,000 US.
Yeah, that's an Australian house. Yeah, 300,000.
Basically. So, yeah, but any of these you can get your hands on are going for a lot of money. I remember probably 10 or 12 years ago, there was still going, Brian's Toys in America had one, and they put one up for $20,000, and everybody laughed at how incredibly overpriced that was. The one that they sold for $20,000, I think, sold last year for $186,000. So it would have actually been quite a good investment.
So Russell has said about unless a box of them got sent out by mistake. No, because they didn't even get around to producing them. They were still just in the sort of early stages of working out the kinks. And go on.
They didn't go into mass production.
That's right. So that wouldn't have happened. So the key thing is, and we're probably going to cover this off in a second, but there are people who are actually manufacturing fake ones now. So they've actually now hollowing out the figure and putting the rocket in and all the rest of it. And of course, once you do that, like, yeah, there's an example there. So if anybody says, oh, they've got a legitimate one that fires, it doesn't. So, I mean, it might fire, but it's a fake one. So there's plenty of examples of those floating around.
Yeah, so I was gonna bring that up on the next slide because it does show.
I'm getting there. Yep, I'll get to there in a sec. Christy said they made a droid that got shot out of projectile in the 90s. Probably by then, everybody had forgotten about the lawsuits from the 70s. And the world had sort of moved on, and maybe they thought, oh, so long as you got warnings, it may choke children and not for children under or whatever. That's how they get around that problem. So that's what explains that. All right. And this is the last one. So, yep, go for it.
Yep. So what Christy said I was going to address in this photo as well, you can see that they did actually officially release rocket firing Boba Fett a couple of years ago on the vintage collection. It's the one on the left, and the left bottom there is the reason it was allowed to be released, because you can see the size of the missile is, quite substantial. It's almost as tall as the figure, where the original one, the little missile, could be fired down the throat and you couldn't get it back out. They changed the safety standard so the missile is, quite long and couldn't go down a throat. It's like a piece of spaghetti or something. You could just pull it out. So the one on the left there came out and was at the shops maybe 10 years ago for about $12, and they go for $150 now. So even the modern versions of them have appreciated in value. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you can really see it that well. In the center on that yellow picture, it has pictures of the very first handmade prototype Boba Fett, and someone has posted for years a reward. They will pay 10,000 US, not for the figure, just for information that leads them to buying the figure. So someone is so interested in buying Boba Fett, you don't have to have the figure. No, this prototype has disappeared. No one knows where it is. But if you know where it is and you tell this person where they can find it, if they manage to buy the figure because of your information, you get a $10,000 finder's fee, which isn't too shabby, is it?
No, I would almost argue it's with Lucasfilm, actually, because Lucasfilm, a lot of people didn't know this, and we didn't know this until we were there in 1993, that they were sent 2 copies of every product ever produced in the Star Wars line. And that was part of the arrangement. So you bought a license to produce toys, collectibles, whatever, and they would get 2 copies. Now, I'm not saying it is with them, but it would be lost in their archive somewhere because it was just all buried in boxes. No one really cares about it, but it's just there anyway. So if it was going to be anywhere, that'd be my guess. So, yeah.
Well, a lot of them were taken home by just the workers at Kenner. I think that's where about 90% of the rocket-firing Boba Fetts have turned up, because they made the molds. They got to a certain point. They weren't going to be used anymore, and they didn't archive stuff. They just were given away and taken home. So that's a nice Christmas bonus if you were given one by your relative that worked at Kenner. And Dags is absolutely right. Lucasfilm, I'm sure holds, I think, as he said, 2 of everything. They wanted 2 of every product that came out, including because they got veto on all the products. A lot of products they actually said, no, you can't make. When Star Wars originally came out, there were some things that they didn't produce, even though they produced most of the stuff. Also, Steve Sansweet, who Dags has actually visited his house, at one stage, he actually did a massive search of the Lucasfilm archives and their merchandise archives, and he found a lot of incredible stuff then that they had lost and didn't know they had. So a lot of the stuff in the archives has been found, but a lot of it is probably still waiting to be found.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to see something cool, there's something cooler than rocket firing Boba Fett, isn't there?
You mean this?
So this is another one of those products that got to prototype stage, and basically Lucasfilm said, nah, nothing to do with this movie is going to ever be released. Nothing to do with this special. I guess you can't really call it a movie. There was one Wookiee book that slipped out that used the characters from it. But apart from that, there's a couple of pictures from toy trade industry magazines of Chewbacca and his family. And it basically looks like for 2 of them, they've got Chewbacca figures and just added sculpty boobs on his wife and drawn some grey hair on Itchy. And they've made a little... no, is it Itchy the little one, or is Itchy the big one?
No, freaking idea. No, Lumpy's the kid.
Yeah, and Lumpy. So these have existed, and I tell you what, these are actually harder to get than rocket firing Boba Fett, because these were shown and nixed straight away. Rocket firing Boba Fett was going to go into production, so there were a lot more samples and examples that turned up. So these are some of the rarest prototypes that are out there. Chewbacca and his family from the holiday special, and no one at Lucasfilm talks about them. Would you have
putting breasts on a Wookiee is just ridiculous, and using the magnifying glass of truth, just for anybody who's not sure, even though it looks like she's got nipples, she doesn't. It's just the way the fur is falling. But that there is so inappropriate. It's just not funny, eh? So, yeah, what's the deal with that? So
it is one of those things where, when 20th Century Fox first saw Chewbacca, they wanted George Lucas to put lederhosen on him or something, because they said he can't run around with no clothes, and George Lucas said, no, Wookiees are naked.
Well, it's very funny, because I was in a TV interview once for a TV segment, and the lady who did the interview said, "Oh, Chewbacca's my kind of guy, tall, hairy, and wears no pants." And then she actually said that on TV. So there you go. But yes, the holiday special characters didn't get made, even though if you remember the holiday special, Lumpy had a fantastic furry banther. That's when the stormtrooper pulls the head off, and they didn't produce that, and that looked fantastic. So they could have produced some grouse stuff from that show, but they didn't. So there you go. Wookiee lederhosen is so wrong. You think?
And here are some more unproduced figures. Now, these came up a couple of different times. You can see they're early in the run and later in the run, but Kenner really wanted to do chromed figures. And so they kept pushing, there's a chromed Imperial Guard and a chromed TIE Fighter pilot and some chromed 3PO units. I don't know if they intended to be C3PO or different versions of them. But they were all knocked back by Lucasfilm because they said, well, nothing appeared like that in the movie. And at the time, they were actually trying to get stuff to be a little bit screen accurate. You've got Jabba's dancer there that there are a few different versions of that have turned up, and that was going to be probably in the next wave, but it got sort of cancelled. And there's some different versions of the power droid R5D4, and there's a Han Solo with for some reason they were going to give him a hang glider pair of wings. And again, Ken probably thought, this is fantastic. We can get these wings off another toy and whack them on Han, and we've got a flying version of Han. And the report came back from Lucasfilm going, but he didn't fly around on a hang glider in the movie, so why are you trying to release that?
I thought that was just a background part of the image. I didn't realize it was part of the figure.
No, that's what they actually were trying to release. But I do think it's interesting, and we'll see this a few times as we go through the slides tonight. When Kenner came back in 96 and released stuff, they often visited ideas that had been knocked back. And I don't know if you remember, Han came with this power loader thing attached to his back as well in the later toys that was released. And I kind of thought Kenner really loved add-ons that are sort of cheap knockoffs you can just stick on the back that have nothing to do with the movies. The other thing there, sorry, yep.
Okay.
The other ones there's a black stormtrooper which was going to be released in the Star Wars run, but at late notice was replaced with the Death Star commander or Death Squad commander. And they said because there wasn't a black stormtrooper, but they could have just said it was a TIE fighter pilot, and you could have got, twice your money out of the same sculpt, because they're basically the same sculpt, really, aren't they?
Nothing that a can of spray paint won't fix. So Rusky Babes picked up on the fact of the who's the fat lady at the end, and Christy said that's the Jabba's dancer. Now I can't pronounce her name. It's Gargola or something like that. She's a six-breasted dancer, and
Yes.
you do wonder, had that figure been produced, this one up here, even though it looks unbelievably unappealing, how well do you think it would have sold? Because it's clearly not meant to be like something stunning to look at. So what do you reckon, old son? Do you reckon it would have even worked as a figure? I mean, collectors would have bought it, obviously, but what do you reckon, kids?
I can't believe they were going to make that instead of sort of Jabba, Princess Leia from Jabba's palace. Maybe Carrie Fisher didn't want a figure of her dressed like that or something. I'm not sure. I do think by the end of the range, they were probably let the toy designers a bit to, let's make stuff that's cool rather than aliens that people know and loved. Because by the end, it was 50% really cool stuff and 50%, why are they releasing, the Imperial dignitary? No kid's going to want him to play with, in an action figure line kind of thing. So I think it falls into that. It would have been like the Imperial dignitary. It might have been on the shelf at the time, but now everyone would love it because it would be rare, because not many people bought it when it came out.
Christy said, I think actually bigger girls would have bought it. Maybe. Someone mentioned it would be worth a lot of money now. As we've discussed on the show multiple times, if they produce a product that doesn't sell because it's not popular, decades later, it tends to be worth most because no one bought it at the time. And Jar Jar Binks stuff being a good example of that in some cases, not all cases. But it is interesting. But I think what would have worked against it, though, Christy, based on your comment, is when they were doing the toys in the 80s, they would have been focusing on the boy market, not the girl market, if you will, like young boys as opposed to young girls. And I mean, sure, it's looked upon as being sexist today, but back then that would have been the focal point. We're producing these items for young boys, and they would have been the target market. So would they have bought a overweight, six-breasted dancer? Probably not, but that's a guess. So there you go.
And you can see that in the Star Wars line. The only female figure they released was Princess Leia. There's, 100-odd figures, and there's Princess Leia, and everyone else in the Star Wars universe is a man.
Yeah.
So
I get where you're coming from, Christy. Yeah, you're right. It's realistic, and obviously they used the real actress for that sequence. But anyway, it didn't get made, and there you go. Cool. And you are right. Thank you very much. But still, boobies, all six of them. Yes, exactly right. Make of that what you will. All right. So from the sublime to the ridiculous, from movies that we all love to shows that no one ever watched, it's this.
Well, this is the kind of the era after Star Wars, where they started to produce stuff for the droids and the Ewoks cartoons. Now, the droids and the Ewoks cartoons did initially well just because they were Star Wars. So a lot of people tuned in out of curiosity, I would say. But were they worth watching on their own merits? I would say if they weren't attached to Star Wars, they would have died really quick. And because they were Star Wars, kids of the time had a little bit more tolerance for them because they were characters that they knew, and adults would watch them because it was a continuation for Star Wars for them as well. Did the toys do well? Absolutely not. They didn't even do well enough to be generally released in Australia. So for us, Star Wars figures basically ended in about 1985 with the Power of the Force. And we did get a couple of, I did see a couple of droids and Ewoks things here, but we never got the figures in general. Now, this would have been a very cool item. They released one wave of droid stuff, and it has the legendary droid A-Wing in. But this was one of the droid ships called the White Witch, which appeared in the series, and they were very close to releasing as an actual vehicle for the toy line, right to the point where they were ready to go in production. They had the box art ready to go and everything. And basically, they thought droids was going to be a much bigger success than it was. They had the second year of figures ready to go. They had ships and everything, and then the sales figures were pretty dismal. So it would have cost them a lot, but they actually cancelled the franchise, and there was just one wave of droids figures. Vlix, an incredibly rare figure, was released in Brazil, and there's only a handful of them that exist. And then there's just as many prototypes as there were figures.
Yeah, it's an interesting name, the White Witch. Yeah, it's an unusual sort of non-Star Wars title, isn't it? Really, when you sit and think about it. But
it is.
Yeah.
It is really, isn't it? So I don't know I don't remember an episode why they explained it was called that either. So it was just something that one of the writers came up with.
So the question I've got to ask is like, if you're a Star Wars collector, is this stuff like absolute, like the best thing to get if you can get it, even though most people never even watch the show or don't really care about the show? How does it work?
It's interesting because there are some Star Wars collectors that collect the original movies. There are some collectors that collect everything vintage, so this is included. There's some collectors that collect absolutely everything, and there's some collectors that just collect what they like. I would say the droids and Ewok stuff, anything you get sells instantly. And that's only because so little of it sold when it was originally out. So, you know, for every Star Wars collection that turns up with all the original figures, only 1 in 100 has the droids figures in there. So even though they're not as desired by all the collectors that do want them have to pay a lot for them just because there's so few of them on the market. So the droids R2-D2 and C-3PO go for a lot more than the regular versions, even though there wouldn't be as many people collecting them.
Very good. Russell said, did they do a Kylo Ren episode? There is an episode where Kylo or Ren, not the character, but something similar gets referenced. I just know that, but that's all I know.
It is one of those.
Yeah.
I think there's a shared name, but it's not the same character.
Yeah, exactly right. So there you go. Very cool. I like this one from Spankin. Hang on, sorry. The White Witch was named after his mother. Yep, exactly. Good on you.
So here's the full range of droids figures that appeared in some overseas catalogs, and you can see that the second wave of figures was so close to go that they had them already painted and already in the publicity before the products were actually pulled. And there are carded examples that were at toy fairs, and the ones on the right there are genuine ones that turned up at toy fairs and have turned up on the secondary market and go for tens of thousands of dollars. The most interesting one I find there, though, is the figure that they've just whacked on the Stormtrooper card, because it was just a test. So they've taken one of the new droids figures with a coin and whacked it on a Stormtrooper card just to get an idea of how it looked carded. So that would be one of those interesting things that at the time was a sample that got disposed of and now would go for tens of thousands of dollars, because it is a one-off of a prototype figure on an unusual card with the wrong coin, all the things that some collectors really look for.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Because as a general rule, items that have been officially produced but are packaged incorrectly, because it is so rare to have that happen, and and it's legitimate. It's not like some fan has done it, but it's been done legitimately in the production line. Yeah, that's where you get a few extra dollars involved. But that's almost like a different discussion. So that was the Droid series that a lot of people did. A lot of fans did watch. A lot of people watched because R2 and 3PO, and we did. They did like them, and they were good, popular characters. Then they moved into the Ewoks cartoon, and of course that had a much limited market because a lot of people weren't fans of Ewoks except for kids. And here we are.
And the Ewoks line was the same, where the first line didn't sell very well, but they were already so far committed into doing the second line that it was a full wave of figures. They'd all got to the point where they could be produced. There were mock-ups that were appearing at Toy Fair of the unproduced figures, and then they just cancelled the line. So the only ones that exist are the handful of hard copies and the handful of first shots and the carded examples that went for Toy Fair, and that's it. And again, to get these, you're paying, many thousands of dollars to get them loose, and tens of thousands to get the toy sample carded ones from Toy Fairs that were around back in the late 80s. Interestingly enough, these figures are so expensive and so rare and so desirable. They've actually sort of inspired a cottage industry. And Mark Poon, who did the rocket-firing Boba Fett, you can buy the entire set of droids or the entire set of Ewoks, the unproduced one, so about 8 figures for about $600. And they look exactly the same as the original one. So if you are a fan and you do need to have every single item, but you can't spend $100,000 on getting them all, you can have really good representations in your collection. But yeah.
It'd be interesting to see as the decades roll on and new collectors come into play and they go, oh, yeah, I'm a collector. I started in 2026, for example, and I know all about the history of the original trilogy collectibles and these action figures and the prequel trilogy and Power of the Force and yada, yada, yada. You do wonder as time goes on whether the mythos of the droids and Ewoks collectibles will just bypass them. And then one day they'll hear about them and they go, oh, my God, I didn't know this stuff even existed. And I reckon that would be the most freakiest thing. So we know about them, and the people watching the show know about them, even though we've never seen them. But to just know or not know that they ever existed at all, and one day learn, oh, they produced action figures in limited form for droids and Ewoks, your mind will just go, holy shit, I didn't see that one coming. So it's going to be interesting times for people ahead.
It's actually almost the opposite for that, because it is more of the new collectors that collect them, because guys our age that grew up collecting Star Wars, we hit the droids and Ewoks and we go, this is crap, and we stopped. And still 30 years later we go, we don't really want these are not part of our Star Wars. But
no, that's not what I meant. If you get someone who starts collecting in the next few years, because these things are like 30, 40 years ago, and I go, I know all about the original trilogy things, I looked in all the books, it could be something they didn't even know existed. Now we physically know that they exist, but there could be people who didn't know that they exist because they end up becoming almost like what do you call it? Something when something doesn't exist and it just has this aura about it. I can't think of the word. Mythical. That'll do me. And then people discover, oh no, they're not mythical. They actually did exist, and that's what I was referring to. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Well, those people are the ones that are collecting them and have forced the price right up because there isn't a lot of them around. A funny story, I bought a lot of Star Wars show bags to get the Star Wars figures, and they had droids and Ewoks figures in that are worth more than the Star Wars figures now. But at the time, we asked the people of the show, could we fish the droids and Ewoks figures out, because we didn't want them.
Yeah.
So,
I just think it would be hard if you said, oh, I'm a collector of action figures and I got all these carded 12 backs and 15 backs and whatever you go, and you go to someone else's house and you go, what the hell are those? And they go, oh, didn't you know about those? They're the droids and Ewoks. Your brain just goes out, explodes through your ears. Now, this is an item that didn't get produced away from droids and Ewoks. And this is something that a lot of people would say, why didn't they make this? Of course, it's the old blockade runner, the old TNT4.
So this is an amazing piece that I really wish would have gone into production. Star Wars was at the knife edge of, did they make these or did they not make these? And it might even have been droids or the Ewoks that put the nail in the coffin and they didn't go with them. Some of the products that would have been out for this would have been absolutely amazing. Some of the products were pretty average, but this is one of those amazing products. This is, of course, the Tantive, the original blockade runner from Star Wars, but towards the end of Power of the Force, they were actually looking at producing this toy. They had done concept art, they'd done the blueprints for it, they'd done the actual, mock-up of it and hard copy, and it was ready to go into production, and it was presented to Kenner as part of the 87 Star Wars line, and they ummed and ahed about it, and they decided not to go down that track. So that's a bit disappointing, because that would have been a legendary ship. Of course, it's not in scale, but who cares? A blockade runner from the original Star Wars would have been an awesome ship to have.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and it is surprising they didn't produce it at all. For trivia buffs out there, for those who didn't know, the cockpit there in real life was just two buckets stuck end to end. And it is a known fact that in the actual model, they took a photograph of a Playboy centerfold poster and stuck it right in the cockpit just there. They shrunk it right down and stuck it in there. And that's absolutely true. So there you go.
Yeah. So, yeah, and you know what? Kenner probably did make the right decision, because when Power of the Force came out, it really didn't sell very well. And there were cool vehicles like the Skiff, which goes for a fortune just because it didn't sell very well at the time. And I'm sure the Blockade Runner would be one of those ships that went for many thousands of dollars, because it would have come out and tens of people would have bought it, and the rest of it would have gone into bargain bins, you know?
Yeah, well, who was to know that the Blockade Runner would make appearances in future movies and TV series and all the rest of it? So, speaking of things that made future appearances, you think, oh, they only appeared in 2 movies, and suddenly they're popping up all over the place as bloody Banthas, mate.
Well, here's the thing: you mentioned earlier that there was a Bantha toy in the Star Wars Holiday Special. It wouldn't have been cool if they'd made one. Now, right at the end, this was going to be a Power of the Force Bantha. So, like the Blockade Runner, they went back to the older movies and looked what was popular, and were going to produce it. And like the Power of the Force figures, where they did the Luke Stormtrooper and, you know, filled in some of the gaps of the popular figures that they hadn't produced, when they were looking to keep the line going, they did look back to the earlier movies and see what they could make. And there is a land speeder there that kind of makes an appearance in the desert of Tatooine, and they were going to try and make one of those. Now, one of the things they weren't allowed to do, underneath the Bantha, there is actually a clone commando. Now, this is before the clone Attack of the Clones or any of that was even thought about, but they were looking at bringing a new, after the Empire had gone, the clones were going to be the new bad guys. And the guy on the left there was the leader of the clone commandos that was going to come in and be the next bad thing in the Star Wars universe. So Kenner started making their own mythology beyond what Lucasfilm had set out in the movies. And it would have been really interesting to see which direction they'd taken it. I don't know if it would have been good, but it would have been different.
Yeah, you got to admit, the key thing is that in the 80s, of course, fans were hungry for more and more material, and it just wasn't there. I mean, once Return of the Jedi had finished and the production of things started to drop off, there was like this demand for more bits and pieces, but there just wasn't. That's the reason why West End Games was so popular, because people wanted to expand the mythos beyond the movies. And there wasn't, like, the Expanded Universe books hadn't really come out yet. You had a couple, like the Han Solo trilogy, the Lando Calrissian trilogy, and whatever else. But people were hungry for information, backstories, front stories, origin stories, and it just wasn't there. So I'm not surprised that they were going to do, if had they produced that clone commander, because at that point nobody knew what the Clone Wars was at all. Nobody was just, it was mythical as to what it was.
Yeah,
that would have actually probably done very, very well.
Well, I call that kind of the wilderness years, because for Star Wars fans, Star Wars was out in the wilderness. There was really nothing around. Like you said, there was West End Gaming and there was a couple of books, but very little. And to be a Star Wars fan then, it was very, you were on the outer. It wasn't like now where everyone would wear a Star Wars T-shirt. Like if you wore a Star Wars T-shirt back then, you were the odd one out.
Yep, I know all about that because I was right in the middle of it. So there you go.
And these are all, again, at the end of the Power of the Force line, where they were throwing stuff at Lucasfilm to see if they could actually produce it. Now, there is a sand speeder, which is a sad attempt at recoloring a snow speeder. That's a really cheap thing, I think. But then they did some other cool stuff. We'll go around, I guess, anti-clockwise. Beneath that, there's a couple of Rebel vehicles. And it is interesting if these were released, because in the Battlestar Galactica line, they released like the land rams, and in the Buck Rogers line they almost released an identical vehicle called the Land Ram, and this again looks like almost the same vehicle Star Wars were going to go with. Down the bottom there's a tandem X-Wing. Now it's coloured in black, and it's actually got room for 2 people, one seated behind the other, so you can see the nose is a lot longer than the normal X-Wing. But I guess that's, you know, if you're escorting someone around in a fighter rather than in a shuttle or something. We've got a different version of the land speeder where the actual engines pop up. I guess it's like for, you know, a speedy escape. Now, down the right-hand side there's something really interesting, which would have been a great add-on to the Millennium Falcon, and that was the Millennium Falcon escape pod. And way back then, they were even thinking of a vehicle that could fit between the horseshoe shape at the front of the Falcon and add added value. So a ship could escape or a little one-man craft could come out. And I do think if I was a kid, some of the mini rigs I thought were pretty crap. I would have thought that was pretty cool because Han could have hopped in that and gone on his own adventures away from the Falcon and Chewbacca and done all different stuff. So that's kind of very toyetic and adds on to sort of the mythology of what already exists, which I think, you know, when you have expanded stuff, that's what it should do rather than just whacking anything out with a Star Wars logo on. And then the last thing there is an AT-AT with a massive, the cannon is from the Death Star playset. So when you really want to wheel your big guns in the Star Wars universe, I guess that's the AT-AT that you want to go with.
Ironically, the gun's facing backwards instead of forwards. Spankin has asked about the clone artwork. Is that Lucasfilm artwork or Kenner? It would have been Kenner, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yeah. Lucasfilm, I think, actually didn't want them to go anywhere near the Clone Wars or do anything with clones because they were still thinking of the long game. So a lot of the Kenner sort of mythology all got knocked back. So Kenner were given the brief. They could design stuff that it looked just off screen of what was in the movies already, but they couldn't go and just make up their own stuff and do all that kind of thing. And that's why these figures didn't get released. Now, I don't know what they were thinking here because even as a kid, if these had come out, I would have thought these were pretty crap. Kenner were getting to the point where the cheapest way to make new figures to expand the line was to kit bash other figures. And that basically meant pulling apart existing figures and adding other things to it and saying it was a brand new figure. So some of these are pretty average. You've got what was the original Zuckuss there, and they've removed the head and put some arms on his shoulders holding a 4-LOM gun. There's some droid in the middle that looks like it's from the droid factory, but with missiles. Did you want to say something, mate?
Yeah, the irony being, of course, in Attack of the Clones, 3PO does get his head knocked off and has a battle droid head stuck on top. So that even in the movies, they'll kit passion.
That's absolutely true. I didn't even think about that. And then the last one there looks like a combination of the medical droid and a IG-88 with a tank head. I cannot see anyone thinking that was ever going to be a figure at Lucasfilm. I don't know what they were thinking there. So what do you think of those figures? Do you think they were worthy of being made into the Star Wars canon?
No, probably not. But by the same token, some of the best ideas come when you just put things together, and Rusky Babes is a model builder will know this. Some of the great ideas, I'll just chuck this with this. It's like cooking a good dinner and you're a cook. You just chuck it with this, and then suddenly something awesome comes out of it and you go, oh, who knew that? And as it turns out, a lot of the robots in the Star Wars universe have some parts that are identical to all the others, but like the head will be different or the arms will be different. And you think, well, it's roughly the same concept. It's like saying, well, we've got this R2 unit. Let's pull the dome off, put something else on top, and suddenly we've got an R5 unit. And you go, that could be classed as kit bashing and all the rest of it. So you get a 3PO unit, you take his head off, you put the bug head on top, and suddenly you got a Death Star droid. So the principle is still the same. So, I mean, sure, those examples, they weren't that flash, but in some cases it can work quite well. So, but having said that, this one definitely doesn't cut the mustard.
Well, I feel the opposite, where if this had been released, I think it would have been the most awesome figure ever.
Mongo Beefhead.
Yes. So this was the Mongo Beefhead tribesman from Tatooine. And again, like I said, they were making their own mythology. But what I think is crazy about this is the head for this is Squid Head, and they've chopped Squid Head's head off at the neck, stuck the top of his head into the shoulder socket of another figure, and his head is actually the chopped off base of his neck with 2 eyes underneath. Now, that's got to be one of the most genius kit bash things ever. Surely, I think something must have happened, like they've given us another chance to do Star Wars, but they want to get us the line together in 1 week. What can we do?
No. What's happened there, right? The dude, he's obviously had the office Christmas party. He's had a few too much of the firewater, the wacky tobaccos, and he's just gone back to work after this really long lunch. And he's going, I'm just trying to stick the freaking head on top, and he couldn't work out which way it goes. And that'll do. Hang on, he's got these bits sticking up. Just snip. Done. All of a sudden, we've got ourselves a Mongo. I was going to say butthead, beef head. How good is that?
So it is one of those things where I don't know what they were thinking. The droids and stuff I thought looked aesthetically crap. I thought this one was quite interesting, actually. I do see they were never going to make it because it really does look. It reeks of cheapness and desperation of whacking whatever they've got left in the toy cupboard together and saying to Kenner saying to Lucasfilm, "Look what we've got! This amazing new alien!" And them all going, "What?" Yeah.
So, how long before Mongo Beefhead makes an appearance in Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett? Because we seem to be, or even Kenobi, because we seem to be living on Tatooine all the time. So, would that be the ultimate like Easter egg?
Well, I tell you what, I reckon within 2 years he'll be in the background somewhere.
Yeah, and only nerds like yourself and that will go, "Oh my god, that's Mongo!" I was going to keep saying Butthead, Beefhead. Oh, how good is that? And you watch, it'll be like, and then what happens? People go, "Oh, that is grouse," and they start like costuming and cosplaying good old Mongo Butthead freaking celebration, and he becomes infamous. So how good's that? That's how it all starts.
That's how it happens. I mean, R5D4, a background character, and they brought him back. So stranger things have happened.
Yeah, exactly right. And now they're saying with R5D4, he deliberately blew himself up so R2 would be picked at the thing. It's like, what a load of bullshit. He just had a bad motivator. Look, so there you go. Very good. Okay, but not all the collectibles that we're talking about are referring to action figures and toys because we've got this.
So these are some of the concepts for the Star Wars logo on the cards. And after Return of the Jedi, they did the Power of the Force, but they realized they could pretty much go with anything because they weren't stuck with the names of the movies that were coming out. So they went through a lot of different logos and a lot of different sort of subheadings, Epic Force and all these other Guardians of the Force and things like that to try and, I guess, come up with something fresh and different for how the line went. And what I do find interesting there, in the right-hand picture, you've got right in the center a chrome Star Wars logo. And that's pretty much what they went with when the toys came back in '95. So, like I said, a lot of the times the prototypes, even if they weren't the most genius things, they did get recycled down the track. And this is one of those examples where none of this stuff goes to waste. It's all in their archives and someone will see it and go, wow, that looks good. And it'll get resurrected for the current line.
What I'm looking at when I'm looking at this, so these ones here, for example, you can just see them take out the Space Saga and put in the Force Awakens or the Last Jedi or the Rise of Skywalker. You are right; they just recycled the old material. Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of those logos that Kenner came up with have been used on books and gaming since as well, or some stuff's very, very similar.
So imagine you're in the art department, and you're the one coming up with all these designs, and they all get rejected because they did get rejected at the time. And yet they reappear decades later. You'd be sitting there thinking, yeah, that was my idea. I come up with that. So, very
well, that's one of those things that happens. And you've got to realize when you work for a company, the company owns your ideas. You get paid your paycheck and go home. And you know what? Yeah. All your ideas got rejected at the time. So you're probably happy for that paycheck. It's just years later when they come back and you're walking around and the whole toy aisle is full of your ideas, you probably might get a bit bitter.
And I was interesting about the different logos they used on the cards. I think you mentioned this down here. Very stylized. They don't work.
They were obviously gearing up to make more Star Wars stuff before the plug got pulled. But I think without the support of the movies and no one going comic or franchises, it was doomed to happen. Now Star Wars is sort of in the fabric of society. We could go 10 years without a movie and there'd still be new action figures. But back then it wasn't like that.
Yeah, good point.
And these are one of those things, they did get produced, but not to the point where we could get all of them. The last sort of gimmick that came with Star Wars figures was the collector coins. And the collector coin was basically an aluminium coin of the character that came packed with the action figure, and you could collect them all. So the last 17 figures all came with collector coins, but a lot of the other figures didn't get packaged with collector coins. But you should have been able to go to the front of your toy shop and get one out of a little packet that was supplied to the toy shop owners, or you could get a little sticker that was on the card and you could send off and get them. But not all of the coin-related stuff was actually produced, and they had albums to keep the collector coins on, and they only got to, product testing stage, and they made mock-ups of them, but they never actually went out. And that would have been a cool little thing for kids to put their coins in rather than rattling around in the bottom of their toy box.
I think this picture comes from Sansweet's collection, doesn't it?
Yes, there's about 3 or 4 complete sets, and I know he does have one of them. A lot of these pictures I took from the Tomarts
Yeah.
guide. There's a special edition that has a lot of prototypes. So they come from the Tome Arts guide, and a lot of them were photos from Sansweet's collection. There are so few pictures of these prototypes that the photos that do turn up tend to be the same ones. I've scoured the internet and books to try and get as many interesting images as I could for this week's show.
Yeah. Does look really, really cool. The only problem with coins, of course, is they're printed on both sides, and you've got to work out which side you want to show. So, yeah.
Now, the other big unproduced line that a lot of work and a lot of money was poured into to ultimately be cancelled was the 12-inch figures. Now, the 12-inch figures were really popular when they came out. I remember when I was growing up, everybody wanted them and everyone kind of had one. But I think that was the difference between the action figures and the 12-inch figures. The action figures, you collected the whole set. The 12-inch figures, you picked which one was your favorite or your two favorites, and you only got one because they were a lot more expensive. So although they were a quality item and people loved them, they weren't collect them all like the action figures were. And ultimately, for the line to survive, they needed to have kids collecting every single one, and they were just too expensive to do that. And that's a bit sad because some of the stuff that they were coming out with looked absolutely stunning. Admittedly, some of it was absolutely lame, and you wonder why they even were thinking about it. Some of the costume packs for Leia, which looked like they'd raided, I guess, Sonny and Cher's wardrobe from the variety show at the time or something like that. They're really dated. But I do kind of think they probably wouldn't have gone into production. But the other ones that were based on Star Wars scenes from Empire Strikes Back, I think would have been really amazingly popular if they had come out. And there's a Luke in Bespin and a Han Hoth. The Leia Bespin in her robes is quite a beautiful doll as well. There was Luke in X-Wing gear, Luke from the medal ceremony. They'd done a Lando Calrissian, which is famous because he's actually one of the Hardy Boys, and they just painted his head brown, and it looked almost exactly like Billy D. Williams. So that was a bit of luck. And then you can see all the amazing, not so amazing ponchos and clothes for the Leia doll. So I don't know if girls would have gone for it. They might have. But it wasn't one of those things, even with the Leia figure, the doll figure. I remember it was mainly the guys that had one in their collection when I was growing up, not really the girls.
So that's interesting because the Leia figure, of course, the idea was you could style the hair, right? Not that you take the buns out, but you could. And unlike any of the other characters, and I think they do try to aim it towards the female market back then for that very reason. But where the boys bought them and played with them, it's probably unlikely. But I agree with you. I mean, because they were so expensive, you're only ever going to get a couple, if that. I mean, I only ever had one. So the action figures were far easier to collect, but the dolls were just like, that's just okay, just the one and one only, and you're done. So, and of course, when they got around to Empire and they did Boba Fett and IG-88, you do wonder why they didn't do Lando, but yeah, obviously IG was easier to produce. So
IG is a very cool character. I think it's one of those things where they showed it, they thought it was amazing, and then it wasn't in the movie because it was probably secret at the time.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you would have seen this. I think this is Steve Sansweet's prototype room where a lot of these collectibles wound up. So, again, there's them. They still exist. They're in displays. They got far enough into production that the actual artwork and boxes were produced. So they went to toy fairs, but ultimately they didn't sell well enough to go into production. And there's a couple on the side there, again, of the Lando and the Luke in X-Wing gear. And interestingly enough, when Star Wars toys came back, the 12-inch action figures were massively sought after and one of the top collectibles, where back where kids were buying them, they were too expensive for the line to be sustained. But by the 90s, when adults were buying them, you couldn't keep them on the shelves. And for about 10 years straight, everything that came in would instantly sell out.
Plus, also because of the nature of the packaging, they'd be easy to damage as well. So to get a box in minto condition, like these days, is like really, really difficult. Couple of questions. I'll get to you in a sec. So Rusky Bose was asking which one I had. Vader. It was almost my favorite character, so he was a no-brainer. It was the only one I wanted, the only one I got, and I was happy with that. Christy said about the clothes, look like you need to change them with doll clothes. That would make a lot of sense. They're probably all based on a roughly similar design and style. You know, some Barbie clothes may have fit some of the other characters. You just never know. And Grant has asked, do you still have your Star Wars figures you had as a kid? Actually, I do, funnily enough. Still loose, missing all their weapons, but I do actually still have my original ones. Not all of them, but like the first 12 or whatever else. I've still kept them. a box in the garage somewhere? Do you want to answer that question?
Being the little capitalist I am, I still have a set of Star Wars figures, but the ones I had as a kid are long gone because I played with them and I updated them with better condition ones. And I did hold on for some for a while, but no, the oldest I have got are probably ones that were from the show. So I wasn't collecting them as a kid. I was collecting them in my teens to keep them as a collectible. So I have some of those, but I don't really have any from when I was a kid still.
Yeah, because I was lucky. I put mine because when you had the carry case, I put mine in the carry case and I kept them that way for a long time. I don't know what happened to the carry case, but then they just got transferred into something else, and they're just still sitting in a box. But yeah, I mean, there'd be thousands of what I've got in your store. So yeah, there's nothing really unique about them. And as I said, all the weapons are missing. So there you go. Very, very good. And believe it or not, that brings us to the end of part one. Now, is there anything you wanted to mention about whatever it is you want to mention about Mr. Aaron? Because I cut you off before we got to the end of it.
No problem. Just thanks everyone for joining along and looking at some of the stuff that wasn't produced for Star Wars. There's a bit more that we'll look at another time, not next week in a show down the track later in the year, but there's some amazing stuff, some Yoda related stuff and some Micro Machine stuff that's pretty incredible. So there is still lots to go, and we haven't even looked at the more modern stuff. This is all stuff from back in the day. If anyone does have any topics or wanted to bring anything up or have seen any prototypes that we didn't highlight, let us know and we'll try to cover them in the future.
Very good. That actually brings us to the end of the show. So hopefully we've put a bit of smile on the dial on this rather miserable planet at the moment. But I made everybody sort of forget all the troubles that's happening outside in the real world. And the cool thing is when you're always talking about Star Wars, you can never go wrong. And so people can go out there and start looking at ways of 3D printing some of these ultra rare collectibles that don't exist, and then try to pass them off as the real thing. And of course, we'll know that they're fake. So very, very groovy. And if you do want to see some of the rocket firing Boba Fett's, obviously they're reproductions. Yeah, Aaron's store has a couple and all the rest of it. So you've got to check them out, which is they're very, very groovy, I've got to say. So good stuff. Any final words before we go?
No, that was it. Thanks, guys.
No problems at all. And just remember, make sure you keep all your unproduced prototype Star Wars collectibles mint in box.
Or rocket fire your Boba Fett anywhere except up a kid's nose.
All right, we'll leave you to it. See you next week.
Good night.